Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. No one could have predicted how a simple cell phone notification would change a person's life. That night, the wind and the rain and the thunder came down from heaven like the wrath of God. Thomas sits in his office in a Boston suburb, intently working on a complex electrical system design drawing. As a senior electrical engineer, he is proud of the reputation he has built in the industry. His designs were always precise, just like the way he approached life. The screen of his cell phone lit up, which shouldn't have caught his attention. But that name stopped him in his tracks. Emma, his 19-year-old daughter, just sent a message. He smiled and picked up his cell phone, expecting to see a greeting from his daughter or a recent update on her college life. However, the words he saw made his blood curdle. "You're not my dad anymore. I have a new dad. He's mom's new boyfriend. I've changed my last name, so please don't contact me again." Thomas stared at the screen, struggling to understand the meaning of the words. His fingers trembled as he tried to dial Emma's number, but all he heard was a cold, busy signal. He switched to social media and realized he had been blackballed. It was as if, in an instant, his presence in his daughter's life had been completely erased. Thunder rumbled again, and the rain outside the window tapped frantically against the glass, like the chaotic emotions inside Thomas. His world fell apart in that moment. 3 months ago, Melissa, his wife, filed for divorce. 23 years of marriage, and that was the end of it. At the time, she said it was because of bad feelings, and Thomas was shocked but respected her decision. It never occurred to him that there might be another man hiding behind it. Thomas turned off the lights in his office and stood in front of the window, letting the darkness wrap itself around him. The rain formed lines on the glass like his broken heart at the moment. Emma's words kept echoing in his head, each word piercing his heart like a knife. "I have a new dad." Thomas thought back to those late nights when he'd come home after working late and seen Emma sleeping quietly. He would gently kiss her forehead and then tenderly tuck her in. He thought of those afternoons teaching her how to ride a bike, those nights helping her with her science homework, and those days when he left an important meeting early for her dance recital. Now it all seems like an illusion. He staggered toward the garage, the rain soaking his clothes, but he barely noticed. As he started the car, a sudden thought hit him. That Melissa and the man must have started a long time ago. All they were waiting for was the perfect time. Thomas drove to the house he and Melissa used to share. Even though he gave up ownership of the house in the divorce settlement, he still has the keys. He knew it was wrong, but he needed to know the truth. The house was dark, with only a faint light from the master bedroom upstairs. Thomas walked gently up the stairs, careful with each step to avoid making any noise. The bedroom door was half covered, and he heard Melissa's laughter, followed by a man's muffled response. He pushed open the door and saw the scene. Melissa and a man, Adrian, whom he recognized as her company's marketing director, were sitting on the bed watching a movie, snuggling intimately together. "Thomas," Melissa exclaimed in surprise, quickly jumping up from the bed. "What are you doing here?" Adrian seemed more composed than Melissa, looking at Thomas almost provocatively. "He's wearing Thomas's robe, the one Thomas got as a gift last Christmas. Emma messaged me," Thomas said calmly, the coolness in his voice unsettling Melissa. "She said she has a new dad." Melissa's face changed, her eyes avoiding Thomas's gaze. "We were going to tell you." "Tell me what?" Thomas interrupted her. "Tell me how long have you been cheating on me behind my back? Or tell me how you convinced my daughter to betray her own father." Adrian stood up and walked towards Thomas. "Look, man, things happen. Melissa and I loved each other, and Emma just accepted that reality. You should do the same." Thomas looked at the man who was 10 years younger than him and more fit. In any other case, he might have backed off. But at the moment, all he felt was a strange calm. "Do you know anything about Emma's college tuition?" Thomas asked. Melissa frowned. "What? I just paid her full tuition for the next semester yesterday. $43,000, Thomas said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's funny how she pulled the plug on me so precisely, right after the money arrived." Melissa's face turned pale. "Thomas, it's not what you think, isn't it?" Thomas asked softly. "Weren't you the ones who told Emma that you would take care of everything for her as long as she broke off her relationship with me and chose your new family? But you don't have enough money to pay for her tuition, do you? So you guys decided to let me pay for the semester before you tell her the truth." The room was silent. Adrian and Melissa exchanged glances, a simple gesture that confirmed Thomas's suspicions. "Get out of my house," Melissa finally said, a mixture of anger and shame in her voice. Thomas laughed, a bitter laugh. "This is our house, Melissa. We bought it together and decorated it together. But it's okay. It's yours now. Like you said, it's time for me to go." He turned to leave, but stopped at the door without looking back. "Tell Emma that her new dad better be able to afford the rest of her college career. Because as of today, I won't be paying a dime." When Thomas came out of the house, the rain had stopped. The sporadic starlight in the night sky filtered through the clouds like the universe was mocking him. He sat in the car with his hands on the steering wheel, but did not immediately start the car. At that moment, he made his decision. He wasn't going to let this betrayal just go away. He doesn't play the poor abandoned husband and father. He'll make Melissa, Adrian, and Emma pay for their betrayal. Over the next few days, Thomas worked almost without sleep to conceptualize his plan for revenge. He is an excellent engineer, good at analyzing problems and finding solutions. His vengeance must be elaborate and as flawless as his every project. First, he needs intelligence. Thomas contacts a private investigator, Bradley, who they have worked with on a business case. "I need a full investigation," Thomas explained to Bradley in a quiet cafe. "Everything about my ex-wife, her new boyfriend, and my daughter. I want to know their schedules, social circles, finances, and any possible weaknesses." Bradley raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask too many questions. "It's going to cost a lot, Thomas." "Money is not an issue," Thomas replied firmly. "I need to be thorough and discreet." A week later, Bradley delivered the first report, which was more detailed than Thomas had expected. Adrian Parker, 38, marketing director, ostensibly glamorous but actually in debt. He has 3 credit cards near the limit, an overdue student loan, and 2 undisclosed bankruptcies. The apartment he lives in is rented, the Porsche he drives is leased, and the designer clothes he wears were purchased on layaway. More importantly, Adrian's career is in crisis. His recent marketing tactics have caused the company to lose a major client and his position to falter. He's been borrowing money from friends to try and maintain his lavish lifestyle. Melissa Watson, who still uses Clark as her last name, is a 46-year-old veteran real estate agent. Recent poor sales and a downturn in the market coupled with changes in her personal life have led to instability in her professional status. She is betting on a large development project with which she hopes to turn things around. What's ironic to Thomas is that Melissa doesn't seem to know the true state of Adrian's finances. She believes he is a successful professional who can provide stable financial support. In fact, she has been funding their lavish lifestyle, further exacerbating her own financial stress. As for Emma, reports indicate that she is fully immersed in the fantasy of a new family. She flaunted photos with Adrian and Melissa on social media, captioning them with messages like "best new family" or "real dad." She quit her part-time job to devote herself to the college experience, relying on Adrian and Melissa for financial support. Thomas scrutinized the information and began to formulate his plan. He will not confront them directly, cause any physical harm, or violate the law. Instead, he will create a situation in which they will ruin each other's lives themselves by more subtle ways of exploiting their own weaknesses and instability. The first step is to target Adrian's career. Thomas used his contacts in the business world to begin systematically spreading doubts about Adrian's professional competence. "Adrian Parker? Yes, I've heard of him," Thomas told Adrian's CEO at an industry gathering, feigned concern in his voice. "I hope he did enough market research for your new client program. I've heard lately that there's some uncertainty in that area." This subtle skepticism, coupled with Thomas's carefully prepared inside information about Adrian's past failed projects, quickly created an atmosphere of distrust in Adrian's work environment. Meanwhile, Thomas hasn't forgotten about that important development project of Melissa's. Through his contacts in the engineering field, he arranged a chance meeting with the project investor. The geology of that area? Thomas mentioned it carelessly over lunch. "I'm not sure it's suitable for this scale of development. I've seen some reports of groundwater problems lately." This hint of professionalism, coupled with some seemingly credible technical data provided by Thomas, was enough to plant seeds of doubt in the minds of investors. With Emma, Thomas's strategy is more indirect. He contacted her college's financial aid office anonymously and raised questions about her financial filings. suggesting that she may have concealed her family's income in order to receive undeserved financial aid. These actions were like stones thrown into the water. No ripples could be seen on the surface, but Thomas knew that underwater currents had begun to churn. Meanwhile, Thomas begins to rebuild the surface of his life. He took on a new engineering project and threw himself completely into the work. He attends social events, stays friendly with coworkers, and even starts dating a financial analyst named Laura. To outsiders, he seems to have recovered from the shock of his divorce and is ready to start a new life. But late at night, Thomas would sit at his computer and follow the changes in Melissa, Adrian, and Emma's lives through various means. He created fake social media accounts so that he could see what Emma was up to. He keeps in touch with Melissa's mutual friends to find out how she is doing. He even monitors Adrian's professional status through business contacts. 2 months later, Thomas's plan began to show results. Adrian lost his job, just as Thomas expected. The company decided to reorganize the marketing department, and Adrian was the first to be laid off. With no income and a huge debt, he began to show signs of stress. His Instagram feed no longer features photos of fancy restaurants, but instead fake positive attitude posts about simple living. Melissa's development program is also in trouble. Investors pulled out, the project was delayed, and the large commissions she expected were lost. Meanwhile, the real estate market declined further and her income plummeted. Emma's situation is probably the worst. An investigation by the university's financial aid office resulted in the loss of a portion of her scholarship. Meanwhile, as Adrian and Melissa's financial support begins to dwindle, she is forced to look for part-time work again. However, it was very difficult to adapt due to the previously developed habits of luxury living. Thomas didn't stop there. His next plan was even more subtle. Through his friend Warren in the financial industry, Thomas obtained a detailed credit report on Adrian. Reports indicate that Adrian has several high-interest loans and is under severe pressure to repay them. "I need to contact these loan companies," Thomas told Warren. "But I don't want it in my name." Warren hesitated. "Tom, you know it's not legal." "I just need information," Thomas said calmly. "I'm not going to do anything illegal." Through information provided by Warren, Thomas anonymously disclosed Adrian's true financial situation and employment status to the lending company. This led to several lending companies simultaneously increasing pressure on Adrian to repay the loan and even threatening legal action. With Melissa, Thomas takes a more subtle approach. He noticed that she began trying to increase her business through social media, posting home information and market analysis. Thomas created several fake accounts and began leaving subtle negative comments under her posts. "The photos of this house look so much better than it actually is. Prices seem a bit inflated considering the market trends in the area. I've heard that the seller wasn't too happy with this realtor. I wonder if that's true." These seemingly mundane comments, coupled with Melissa's already fragile professional status, further undermine her credibility and confidence. At the same time, Thomas began to spill the beans to Emma's roommates and friends about Adrian and Melissa's unstable relationship. This strategic spreading of rumors, coupled with the signs of financial hardship that Emma has been able to see firsthand, makes her begin to question her decision. 6 months later, Thomas's plan for revenge is paying off in spades. Adrian and Melissa's relationship begins to fall apart. Financial pressures, professional frustrations, and mutual recriminations cause them to argue frequently. Adrian began to drink heavily, further exacerbating the problem. They are no longer the perfect new family that Emma's social media feeds show, but a couple who have fallen apart under the weight of reality. Melissa is forced to sell the house she and Thomas once shared and move into a much smaller apartment. Her career also hit a low point, with few clients wanting to work with her. Emma's social media feeds went from showing off her new family to complaining about the pressures of school and work. She no longer mentions Adrian and rarely posts pictures with Melissa. One day, Thomas noticed her posting a meaningful status. "Sometimes what you think is the right choice ultimately proves to be the biggest mistake." Thomas smiled at the screen, knowing that the first crack had appeared. To further deepen these rifts, Thomas begins the second phase of the program. He contacted several of Adrian's former coworkers and learned that Adrian was applying for new jobs, but was in a difficult position because of his previous record of failure. Thomas made sure that Adrian's potential employer stumbled upon the details of these failures. At the same time, he spreads questions about Melissa's professional competence through contacts in the real estate industry. These are not direct attacks, but subtle questions and concerns that are enough to make a potential client turn to other brokers. With Emma, Thomas's strategy is more indirect but equally effective. He made sure that she stumbled upon stories of Adrian's past deceptive behavior and how he had repeatedly used women for financial support. This information, coupled with the difficulties Emma has already experienced firsthand, makes her begin to question Adrian's true motives and her decision to abandon her father. A year and a half later, Thomas's revenge reaches its climax. Adrian had a complete breakdown due to alcoholism and financial stress and was arrested by the police for drunk driving and minor vandalism. This incident was the last straw that broke the camel's back. Melissa finally sees Adrian for who he really is and ends their relationship. But it was too late, and her career and finances had been irreversibly damaged. Emma, after experiencing cuts in college financial aid, the stress of a part-time job, and witnessing the collapse of Adrian and Melissa's relationship, finally realizes the mistake she's made. She tries to contact Thomas, but his number has changed and all her texts and emails go stone cold. One rainy night, Thomas receives an anonymous email. Opening it, he saw it was from Emma. "Dad, I know you probably don't want to hear my voice again, but I need to talk to you. I made a terrible mistake that I regret every day. Please give me a chance to explain. I realize now all that you did for me, and how foolish I was to throw it all away." Thomas stared at the screen, feeling the complex emotions surging through his body: anger, sadness, and a hint of unnameable satisfaction. His plan worked, even beyond his expectations. But as he was about to reply, he stopped. No, this is not the time. He deleted the email and did not respond. Over the next few months, Emma continued to try to contact Thomas, but each time she received no response. She even tries to pass the message on through Thomas's co-workers and friends, but Thomas has made sure that his social circle is completely isolated from his past. Meanwhile, Thomas's life is on a new track. His relationship with Laura deepens, and they begin to discuss marriage and the future. He took his career to the next level when he accepted a leadership position on an international project, earning significant revenue growth and industry recognition. He buys a new apartment, decorated in a completely different style from his past home, as if physically cut off from his past life as well. He took up photography, which not only helped him get through his lonely nights, but also unexpectedly became a form of creative expression. 3 years have passed. Thomas and Laura are engaged and planning a small wedding next month. Together, they renovated their new home, creating a cozy and modern space that is completely different from the one Thomas shared with Melissa. One rainy night, history seems to be repeating itself. Thomas stood in front of the office window again, watching the rain wash over the glass. But this time, he was no longer the broken man. He has rebuilt himself, stronger than ever. The doorbell rang. Thomas walked towards the door and saw Emma standing outside through the cat's eye, soaked by the rain and looking haggard. He opened the door, but only partially, enough to see her, but not to let her in. "Daddy," Emma said, her voice quivering. "I need help." Thomas looked at her calmly, as if he were looking at a stranger. "Who are you?" he asked. Emma's eyes widened with pain and surprise. "Dad, it's me, Emma, your daughter." "I have no daughter," Thomas replied calmly. "My daughter died 3 years ago, the moment she told me I was no longer her father." Tears slid down Emma's face and mixed with the rain. "Dad, please. I know what I did was wrong. I'm deluded. Adrian just wanted Mom's money. He never cared about me. When the money ran out, he left us. Mom's almost broke now, and I had to drop out of school. I have nowhere else to go." Just as Thomas was about to respond, a soft female voice came from behind him. "Tom, who's at the door?" Laura walked over to Thomas and looked curiously at the young woman at the door. Emma's eyes widened at the strange woman standing behind her father. Her expression changed from despair to confusion and then shock. "Emma, this is Laura, my fiancée," Thomas introduced calmly. "Laura, it's a salesman, I guess." Laura smiled kindly and went back inside, leaving Thomas and Emma to face each other alone. Emma stood there in shock as the rain continued to soak her clothes. You're getting married?" "Next month," Thomas confirmed. "Small ceremony, just close friends and family." Can I come in?" Emma pleaded. Just a few minutes so we can talk. Thomas was silent for a moment, as if considering the request. Then he shook his head gently. No, I don't think that's a good idea. You see, it took me a long time to recover from your betrayal. Now I have a new life, a new family, just like you chose to do 3 years ago. But I was wrong. Emma cried out. I regret every day, every minute. Dad, please give me a chance. Thomas has a cold expression on his face. Do you know what the last message you sent me after I paid for your college tuition was? Emma lowered her head in shame and said, You're not my dad anymore. I have a new dad. So where's your new dad now? Thomas asked, a hint of sharpness in his voice. Emma was speechless as the tears continued to flow. Just as I thought, Thomas said. Emma, you made choices, and now you have to face the consequences of those choices. That's how life works. I have nowhere to go, Emma said desperately. Mom lost everything. She's in rehab now. I was evicted by my apartment landlord. Dad, I'm begging you. Thomas's eyes became colder. You know what, Emma? That's exactly how I felt 3 years ago. When you and your mother erased me from your lives, I had nowhere else to go. But I found a way. I rebuilt my life. Maybe you should learn to do the same. He started to close the door, but stopped at the last minute. By the way, if you're looking for a job, I hear the downtown coffee shop is hiring. Sure, it's a starting point, but it's better than being homeless. Good night, Emma. The door closed, leaving Emma in the rain, alone, just as Thomas had been left 3 years ago. Thomas returned to the living room, and Laura looked at him with concern. Is that really a salesman? Thomas nodded, his expression calm. In a sense, yes. She's pushing remorse and apologies, but I'm not interested. Laura looked a little confused, but didn't pursue it further. Well, if you're sure. I'm pretty sure, Thomas replied, walking towards the window and watching Emma's slowly departing figure disappear into the rainy night. A deep sense of satisfaction filled his chest. His revenge was finally complete, perfect. Melissa has lost everything: her house, her career, even her dignity. Adrian reveals his true colors, loses his job, and falls deeper into debt. And Emma, the daughter who once proudly abandoned him, now tastes the bitter fruit of betrayal. Justice, in a cold and precise way, has been achieved. The rain slid down Emma's cheeks, mixing indistinguishably with her tears. She stood on the sidewalk and stared at her father's apartment until light after light went out. The last light, the bedroom light, darkened, leaving her alone in the darkness and cold. When she sent that cruel text message 3 years ago, she never imagined that one day she would be standing here, desperate for help from the same man she abandoned. At the time, she was swept away by Adrian's charm and commitment, believing his promises of a better future. And now those bubbles have burst, leaving only the painful reality. Emma walked slowly towards the bus stop, her steps heavy and weak. Her apartment, if that shabby one room could even be called an apartment, was located on the other side of town. It takes an hour and a half by bus, but she can't afford a cab. There was already a homeless man sitting on a bench at the bus stop, and he eyed Emma warily before moving to make room for her. She nodded gratefully and sat down. Bad day, huh? The homeless man asked, his voice gentler than Emma had expected. 3 terrible years, Emma replied bitterly. The homeless man nodded as if he understood perfectly. Life is like that sometimes, kid. We make choices, and then the choices shape us. Emma looked at the stranger, amazed at the wisdom in his words. Do you think people can change? Real change? The homeless man thought for a moment, then slowly shook his head. Some mistakes are too serious to fix. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive. These words echoed in Emma's mind like a final judgment. She did feel remorse, deep remorse. But some things, once they happen, can never be undone. The bus came, interrupting her thoughts. She said goodbye to the homeless man and boarded the bus. The car was almost empty, and Emma found a window seat. As the vehicle started, her thoughts went back 3 years to the decision that changed everything. Melissa and Thomas's marriage has been on the rocks for a long time, long before Adrian came along. Thomas is always working and is seldom at home. When he is home, their interactions also center around Emma's school and family matters. Love, if it ever existed, is gone. Then Adrian shows up, with his charm and passionate interest in Melissa. He made her feel appreciated and cherished again. Emma saw a rekindled light in her mother's eyes like she had never seen as a teenager. When Melissa asks Thomas for a divorce, Emma instinctively sides with her mother. Thomas didn't argue, didn't fight. He just accepted it as if he was relieved too. This further reinforces Emma's belief that he never really loved them. Adrian quickly fills the void left by Thomas and becomes the new male character in the family. He was kind to Emma, helping her choose a college program, discussing her future career plans, and even promising to pay her tuition. "You're my daughter now," he used to say. "I'll take care of you, like a real father should." Emma is confused when she realizes that Thomas has already paid her tuition. Adrian explains that it was Thomas's last guilt trip, a way to get out of his responsibilities. "He's paying tuition to make himself feel better, not for you," he said. "Now that he has done his duty, he can leave in peace." On Adrian's advice, Emma sends that text message, changes her last name, and cuts off all contact with Thomas. The purpose of this, according to Adrian, was to make Thomas realize that he was no longer a part of the family so that he could let go and move on. Looking back now, Emma realizes how easily she was manipulated. Adrian never intended to pay for her tuition. He's just using her as leverage to make sure Thomas pays up front and then gets Emma to cut off contact so Thomas can't get his money back or change his mind. The bus stopped at a red light, and Emma's eyes fell on a small diner on the side of the road. Through the window, she saw a father and daughter having dinner together, the father listening intently to his daughter's conversation with a gentle smile on his face. This simple scene made Emma's heart ache like a knife. She had moments like that once, but she took them for granted until they were gone forever. When Adrian's true colors begin to show, everything happens fast. It starts with the little things: canceled dinner dates, forgotten commitments. Then there are financial problems. He can no longer afford to pay Emma's expenses and no longer sends her expensive gifts. Finally, there are emotional changes. He starts drinking heavily, loses his temper with Melissa, and is indifferent to Emma. The situation deteriorated dramatically when Adrian lost his job. He started staying home all day, drinking, watching TV, and refusing to look for a new job. Melissa had to take on all the financial responsibilities, and the stress made her cranky and demanding. Emma tries to mediate, tries to help, but her efforts only result in resentment on both sides. Adrian accuses her of siding with her mother, and Melissa complains that she's too lenient with Adrian. Home becomes a battlefield, and Emma a forgotten casualty. When Adrian finally leaves, he doesn't say goodbye, doesn't explain, doesn't even leave a note. He just packed up and left while Melissa was at work and Emma was in class. He took Melissa's jewelry, Emma's laptop, and all the cash in the house. Melissa broke down. She started drinking, neglected her work, and lost more and more money. The house is repossessed by the bank, and they are forced to move to a cramped apartment. Emma had to drop out of school to get a job to pay the bills. Her dream, to become a veterinarian, seems further and further away. One night, after another drunken tantrum by Melissa, Emma finally got up the courage to ask the question that had been bothering her. "Why did Daddy leave us? What's the real reason?" Melissa's eyes grew hollow, and after a long silence, she finally spoke the truth. "He didn't leave us, Emma. I was the one who betrayed him. My relationship with Adrian started long before your father and I separated." Even though Emma had suspected this, it still shocked her to hear her mother's own admission. "How long has it been?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "Almost a year," Melissa replied, shame in her voice. "When your father found out, he could have made the divorce very difficult. He could have fought for the house and for more property. But he didn't. He gave me everything I wanted, including primary custody of you, even though the judge preferred joint custody. All he asks is to be able to participate in your life and pay for your college." This revelation makes Emma's world fall apart again. She had always thought that her father had abandoned them, when the opposite was true. Not only did she betray her loving father, she helped Adrian, and Melissa hurt him further. As time went on, it got worse and worse. Melissa's drinking problem intensified, ultimately leading to her being sent to rehab after a DUI accident. Emma is forced to bear all the living expenses on her own, but her salary is nowhere near enough to pay the apartment rent. Eventually, she received an ultimatum from her landlord: either pay the 3 months of rent she owed or move out. In desperation, Emma thinks of Thomas. "It's just for the money," she says to herself, "just a temporary solution." But deep down, she knew it was about more than just money. It's about apologizing, about seeking forgiveness, about trying to repair irreparable harm. But now, standing in the rain, rejected mercilessly by her father, Emma finally understands the true consequences of her actions. Some hurts are too deep to heal. Some betrayals are too serious to forgive. The bus came to a stop and Emma stepped off and walked towards the apartment building she once called home. But when she arrived, she found that the locks had been replaced and her suitcase and several cardboard boxes were stacked in the doorway, already soaked with rainwater. No home, no family, no future. Emma sat on her soggy suitcase, feeling a sense of desperation and loneliness that she had never felt before. Meanwhile, Thomas and Laura lie in bed, discussing the details of their upcoming wedding. "Are you sure you don't want to invite more people?" Laura asked, her fingers gently stroking Thomas's arm. "Only 20 seems a bit low." "I like small weddings," Thomas replied. "The only people who really care about us are the people who really support us." Laura nodded, then hesitated. "The girl, the one at the door tonight. She's not a salesman, is she?" Thomas was silent for a moment, then shook his head. "No, she's not." "Who is she?" "A ghost from the past," Thomas replied, his voice calm and cool. "Someone who no longer matters." Laura seemed about to press the issue, but noting the determination in Thomas's expression, decided not to pursue the subject. She kissed him gently on the forehead, then turned off the bedside lamp. Thomas lay in the darkness, listening to Laura's gradually steadying breathing. His thoughts went back 3 years, to the rainy night that changed everything. He remembered his pain, anger, and despair. Then he remembered his decision, that calm and precise plan of revenge. Everything went according to plan. Melissa lost her career, her property, and her dignity. Adrian loses his job, his reputation, and his pretend successful life. Emma has lost her dreams, her security, and her future. Perfect revenge. But when Thomas remembered Emma standing in the rain, he felt a strange emptiness. Not remorse, not sympathy, but a strange feeling, as if the satisfaction of revenge wasn't as strong as he'd expected. No, he wouldn't begin to question his actions. They chose to betray, and they must face the consequences. That's exactly what they did to him. Thomas closed his eyes and tried to fall asleep. But Emma's voice continued to echo in his head. "Dad, I need help." He rolled over, trying to chase the thought away. He's already won. He has completely destroyed the lives of those who betrayed him. That's what he wants, isn't it? The next morning, Thomas got up earlier than usual. He gently left the bed, careful not to wake Laura, and walked toward the kitchen to prepare coffee. When he opens the refrigerator, he notices the note Laura left last night. "Honey, I need to go out early today. Client morning meeting. See you tonight. Love you, L." Thomas smiled, grateful for the woman who understood him, the woman who had never betrayed him. He sipped his coffee and walked towards the balcony overlooking the morning view of the city. The rain had stopped last night, but there was still a dampness in the air. His cell phone rings. It's Bradley, the private investigator. "Good morning, Bradley." Thomas picked up the phone. "Anything?" "Hi, Thomas." Bradley's voice sounded a little hesitant. "I know our partnership is over, but I thought you might be interested in this." "What is it?" "It's about your ex-wife," Bradley said. "She killed herself last night in rehab." Thomas's hand tightened around his coffee cup, almost crushing it. "What?" "Police found her slitting her wrists in the bathroom," Bradley continued. "She left a letter mentioning her remorse and the shame she couldn't face." Thomas felt a wave of vertigo. He sat in a chair on the balcony, trying to organize his thoughts. "Does Emma know?" "I'm not sure," Bradley replied. "But according to my last trace, she was kicked out of her apartment last night. I don't know where she is now." After the call ended, Thomas sat and stared at the distant horizon. His plan for revenge had succeeded, more completely than he had expected. Melissa is dead, Adrian is broke, and Emma is homeless. He should feel satisfied that justice has been done. But instead, he felt a strange emptiness. Hours later, Thomas sat in his office, trying to focus on his work, but his thoughts kept drifting to Melissa and Emma. He turned on his computer and typed in Melissa's name, searching for news about her death. Sure enough, several local news sites picked up the story. One article referred to her bizarre death, and the other simply called it a suicide. But what made Thomas's eyes glaze over was a photo of Emma standing in front of the police with shock and pain written all over her face. Emma in the photo no longer looks like the proud and confident girl she was. She was thin, gaunt, and had deep dark circles under her eyes. She was wearing an oversized jacket, probably obtained from a charity, and her hair was wet against her face. Thomas closed his browser, leaned back in his chair, and closed his eyes. His revenge is complete, but at what cost? Melissa was dead, Emma was broken, and he, Thomas, who should have felt triumphant, instead felt nothing but exhaustion. After work, Thomas didn't go straight home. Instead, he drove to a coffee shop downtown, the one he'd mentioned to Emma last night. He sat in the corner, ordered a coffee, and waited. He wasn't sure what he was waiting for, or why he was here, but something in his gut told him that Emma might show up. Hours passed, and the coffee shop's foot traffic dwindled. Thomas was about to leave when he saw her, Emma standing at the counter, talking nervously. The shopkeeper shook her head, her shoulders slumping. Thomas walks towards the counter and stands behind Emma. "I need this job," she pleaded, desperation in her voice. "I can do anything, cleaning, dishes, anything." "I'm sorry, ma'am," replied the proprietor, "but we've just filled all the vacancies. Maybe you can come back in a couple weeks and check it out." Emma nods and turns to leave, almost bumping into Thomas. She looked up to see him, and her eyes widened with shock and mixed emotions. "Dad," she whispered, her voice almost a whisper. Thomas didn't respond. Instead, he turned to the shopkeeper. "Ed, this is the guy I mentioned before." The store owner looked a little confused, but then it dawned on him. "Oh, yeah, you said someone might apply for the job. Well, if she was recommended by you, then we can try. Tomorrow morning, starting at 7 a.m. Is that okay?" Emma looked at Thomas, then to the shopkeeper, confused. Yeah, sure. Thank you." As they walked out of the coffee shop, Emma stopped and turned to Thomas. "Why?" she asked, confusion in her voice. "Why are you helping me?" Thomas looked at her and noticed the tears in her eyes and the exhaustion on her face. "I heard about Melissa." "I'm sorry." Emma's eyes filled with tears again. In her letter, she says everything is her fault. She says she's sorry for you, for me. She said she hoped I could find you and that you would forgive me, even if you never did. Thomas felt a tingle, but suppressed it. "I got you a job, Emma. But that's all. I can't. I'm not coming back into your life. Too much hurt, too much betrayal. Some things can't be fixed." Emma nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I understand. I'm just saying. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm really sorry." Thomas looked at her, this young woman who had once been his daughter, now so broken and alone. "I know," he said finally, "but sometimes apologizing isn't enough." He turned to leave, but stopped after a few steps and didn't look back. There is a small studio in the apartment building next to the coffee shop for a reasonable rent. Talk to Ed. He's the owner and might give you a chance. Then he continued walking to his car, feeling Emma's gaze behind him. Laura was preparing dinner when Thomas got home. She smiled when she saw him, but the smile disappeared when she noticed his expression. "What happened?" she asked, lowering the cleaver in her hand. Thomas thought about how to explain everything, but ultimately just shook his head. It was just a difficult decision. Laura walked toward him and gently placed her hand on his chest. "Do you want to talk about it?" "Not now," Thomas replied. "Maybe later." Laura nodded and smiled understandingly. "Okay, dinner will be ready in a minute." That night, Thomas lay in bed, contemplating his actions. His vengeance is complete. He has destroyed the lives of those who betrayed him, just as they destroyed his. But the taste of victory was not as sweet as he expected. Melissa has committed suicide. Adrian struggled with financial and legal problems. Emma is homeless and broken. Thomas, on the other hand, despite his new life and future wife, still feels an emptiness that he can't get rid of. Maybe that's the real price of revenge. Not just for those victims, but for the avengers themselves. A few days later, Thomas passed by that coffee shop again. Through the window, he saw Emma working inside, in her uniform, preparing coffee for customers. She looks tired but focused, trying to learn new skills and adapt to her new environment. Thomas didn't go in. Instead, he stood across the street, watched for a moment, and then continued on his way. His vengeance was accomplished and the price was paid. It's time to really move on. 3 months later, Thomas and Laura's wedding took place in a small but elegant venue. There were only 20 guests, all of whom were closest friends and family. Thomas stood there, waiting for Laura to walk toward him, feeling a strange calmness. As he scanned the crowd, he noticed a figure standing in the back row. Emma, in a simple dress, looks healthier than she did a few months ago. She made no attempt to approach or interrupt, but simply stood there and witnessed the moment. Thomas's eyes met hers, but he didn't nod or smile. He just looked away for a moment, then turned his attention back to Laura, his future, his new beginning. After the wedding, as the guests enjoyed dinner and champagne, Thomas notices that Emma has left. But on the gift table, there was a small package marked with his name in handwriting he immediately recognized as Emma's. Thomas picks up the package, hesitates, then opens it. Inside is an old photo showing a young Thomas holding baby Emma with boundless pride and love on his face. Below the photo was a note. "Dad, congratulations on your wedding. From the bottom of my heart, I hope you and Laura are happy. I don't expect forgiveness or reconciliation. I just want you to know that I have learned the error of my ways, and I am working every day to be a better person. Thank you for the opportunity to get a job and a place to live. It's more than I deserve. I want to thank you for everything you taught me, even though it took me so long to really understand the value of those teachings. You always say honesty and integrity are more important than anything else. You're right. I know I am no longer your daughter, but you will always be the father of my heart. Eternally grateful, Emma." Thomas put the photo and the note back in the box and closed the lid. Instead of taking it home, he left it in the pile of gifts. It was a memory from the past, a past he had decided to let go of. 6 months later, Thomas was having lunch at a downtown restaurant when he happened to see Adrian. The once polished marketing director now looks haggard, dressed in a cheap suit, obviously for a job interview. Adrian saw Thomas as well, and their eyes met briefly. A flash of shame and fear flashed in Adrian's eyes before he quickly lowered his head and hurried away. Thomas watched his departing back and felt a strange sense of calm. He no longer cares about Adrian, no longer cares about past hurts. His vengeance is complete and the price has been paid. A year later, Thomas is sitting in his new office, having achieved remarkable success as the company's technical director. Laura is pregnant and they are expecting their first child. Life moved on in a way he never expected. There was a new email on his computer screen from a familiar address. Emma. Thomas hesitated, then clicked open. "Dear Thomas, I don't know if you still use this email address or if you will read this email, but I wanted to let you know that I was accepted into the community college and will be starting the veterinary assistant program. It wasn't my original dream, but it's a new beginning. The coffee shop job and the apartment you introduced me to help me get back on my feet. Ed is a great guy and gave me a chance despite my inexperience. I don't expect a response or forgiveness. I just want you to know that your actions, even in anger, have given me a chance to rebuild. I strive every day to be a better person, a person of honesty and integrity, just as you taught me. Even if our paths never cross, I want you to know that I am eternally grateful for everything you have given me, including this final harsh lesson. Eternally grateful, Emma." Thomas read the email, then closed it without replying. His vengeance is complete, his justice is done. Emma, Melissa, and Adrian all pay the price for their betrayal. If Emma is rebuilding her life now, it's her own doing, not his. He didn't need her gratitude or a connection to the past. He had moved on, as he had always told himself. But that night, when Laura had gone to sleep and Thomas was sitting alone on his balcony, watching the city lights, he found himself thinking about Emma's email. She's rebuilding, trying to find a way forward. It was an outcome he never expected in his plan for revenge. Revenge has been accomplished, and the price has been paid. Melissa dies, Adrian goes bankrupt, and Emma loses everything. That's exactly what Thomas wanted. But as he looks at the stars in the night sky, Thomas wonders what the real victory is after all this hurt and pain. Is it seeing those who betrayed him suffer? Or do you know that you have rebuilt your life and are stronger than you used to be? In any case, one thing is certain: no one escapes the consequences of betrayal. Not Melissa, not Adrian, not Emma, not even Thomas himself. Revenge is a double-edged sword that not only hurts the target, but also changes the person wielding it. But sometimes, maybe most of the time, that price is worth it. Because in this world, every action, every choice, every betrayal must have consequences. It's what Thomas believes in, and it's at the heart of his vengeance. Whatever the outcome, whatever the cost, he did not regret his choice. Because in the shadow of betrayal, vengeance is not just an option, it's a necessity. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.